Okay, so rather than just standing up here and pointing out to the horizon, and yeah, look, nice picture of the beach. So just by adding a little bit of foreground interest, we can just make everything a little bit more exciting. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll take our raw file and then we'll do a little bit of magic in Photoshop and make it look more like this. So what we're going to do today, I'm just going to give you some ideas of how you can get some nice photos on a beach that doesn't have any epic sea stacks, doesn't have any big waves, okay? It's very much just a beach. Now, we're in a bit of luck today because this is called Shelly Beach, and for a very good reason. It is littered with shells. So what we're going to do, the sky looks like it might be okay, but what I really want to do is just really focus on our foreground. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just kind of run through a couple of ideas. And the first one, as you can see, there are lots of little shells. So what we want to do is get down really close to the shells, try and get them to fill our frame as much as possible. They are very small shells. If we hunt around and try and find a nice big shell to be our feature, that's ideally what we want. Like one nice big solid shell would be nice. But yeah, I'll show you some nice shallow depth of field images. So one thing to note, because we're going to be focusing really close, as in I'm going to have the camera on the sand right next to the shells, even if we shoot at f/22, our background will be out of focus. Okay, so just by putting our aperture smaller or a larger f number, doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get our depth of field greater. Okay, because we're going to be so close to the shells, our depth of field is going to be narrow. So ideally, we still want to shoot at that f8 to f11, that ideal range, just so we get nice sharp images. Okay, so I'm just going to move around, find different shells, just try and find something that looks quite nice. There's plenty of nice shells down here, just getting a composition is the tricky part. Okay, so again, getting in nice and close, just focusing at my minimum focal distance. Okay, so what I mean by minimum focus distance, it will be on your lens. Okay, so if we go up to there, that's at infinity. And down here, 0.28. Okay, so that's my minimum focus distance. So I've just got it set to as close as it'll go. And then I'm just sort of moving the camera backwards and forwards to get my focal point. Rather than trying to use an autofocus or use a focus manually, just move the camera backwards and forwards to get our focal point. Okay, so just looking for some nice shells. We don't want shells that are flipped over. Trying to find some that are sitting nice and flat on the ground. It's hard to compose a shot just because there's so much going on. But yeah, just trying to find a nice shell in amongst the mess to be our feature. Okay. What I'm going to do is again get down nice and low, and I'm going to try and get a wave crashing over the shells to get some nice reflect. Okay, there's a really nice shell, so I want that shell as my focal point. Okay, so I'm just zooming in on the shell that I want to focus on. There it is there. And I'm just moving my camera backwards and forwards until that's in focus. And then get the shot. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Okay, we're starting to lose light, so I'm just going to bump up my ISO. And shots like this, I don't mind a high ISO. Okay, and again, just trying to find some interesting shells that aren't too messy. There's a nice little cluster just there. Get down really low. Yeah, that's kind of nice. And get it with the wave there. Try some with the water, some without the water. So now I'm sort of protecting my highlights more than the sky. That's okay. So that's looking quite nice. Just a nice shallow depth of field type image. Okay, we don't have to have our background in focus all the time. Okay, so rather than just standing up here and pointing out to the horizon, and yeah, look, nice picture of the beach, but we're just trying to make them a little bit more interesting than just pointing it at our beautiful sunset. So just by adding a little bit of foreground interest, we can just make everything a little bit more exciting. Okay? And that's what it's all about, making our photos stand out so they're not just photos. Okay, so let's just do a very quick and basic edit on this image. Okay, this is more about getting the shots in camera. Okay, so once again, I kind of keep an eye on my histogram. So if we see up here, I keep my highlights under control. That's kind of the #1 rule with all of my sunsets, seascapes. Same thing applies when we're doing these shallow depth of field images. So still keeping my highlights under control because I know I can bring up shadow detail. So I'm just going to do a very basic edit on this. So we're just going to apply our Adobe Landscape for starters. We're going to straighten the image. Okay, that's because I don't have my flippy screen, so it's very hard to compose an image when you've got the camera so close to the ground. Okay, apply my lens correction. That will just straighten the horizon for us, remove a bit of the vignetting. Okay, and with an image like this, we really don't need to do much. I will bring down the highlights a little bit, lift the shadows a little bit. Now, blacks and whites, I want this to be a fairly contrasty image. So in this case, I'm not going to touch my blacks and whites. I might just give it a little bit of contrast. Okay, and what I really want to do is enhance this shell. Okay, these two shells are kind of what the image was all about. So what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to crop it in a little bit more, I think. Let's just get that horizon nice and straight. And we're just going to crop it in. Actually, no, we're not. What we'll do is we'll do our first edit. Okay, and that's looking pretty good where it is. Okay, if anything, what I might do is grab a radial filter or a radial gradient, and I just want to lighten those shells up a little bit. That's where we want our eye to start and then eventually wander up. So I'm just going to brighten it up just with the exposure, just a tiny bit. And then if we lift our whites, that will really boost it and really make that shell pop. Okay, so if we look at before, just a little bit dull and flat, and just by adding a little bit of light to it, now we've enhanced that shell a little bit more. Okay, and that's it. That's all we really need to do to it. But we're going to do some photoshopping. Okay, and like I said, this is the oldest trick in the book, and it's very easy. Okay, so let's take this over into Photoshop. So from Lightroom, we can just right click, edit in, and edit in Adobe Photoshop. Okay, so now we've got our image opened into Photoshop. And like I said, this is the oldest trick in the book. What we're going to do is we're going to make these two shells a little bit larger, just so they take up a bit more of our frame. Okay, like I mentioned in the video, the shells were very small. So if you can find a nice big shell to fill your foreground, it will make the shot a lot more interesting and just nicer looking. Okay, in this case, I couldn't find any big shells. We only had lots of little shells to deal with. This is where we use Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is, with our background layers selected, I'm going to press Control or Command and J, and that's going to make a copy. So we've now made a copy of our background. What we want to do now is if we press Control or Command and T, that is transform. Okay, so now that top layer is selected. What we're going to do is transform that top layer by making it larger. So once you hit Control and T, you're going to see these little squares appear around your image. And what we can do is we can click and drag them and we can make them bigger. So what I'm going to do is make those shells nice and big. So somewhere around about there. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. And then if we just add a layer mask to that top layer, and we're going to black out the bits that we don't want to affect. So I'll get a nice big brush and we're going to black out the original image. So we get all of that nice sky. And because it's a shallow depth of field and it's slightly out of focus, it just blends together nicely. Okay, it's already out of focus. So if we have a look at, there's the original image, and now we've just enhanced those shells in the foreground. Okay, made them bigger. And you can get in there and you can black out as much as you like. So I think with the original image, I did get in there because I liked all those reflections in the sand. There was a little bit of a sand pool there, or a little water pool, so something like that. So now we've enhanced our shells to make them look bigger. And that's how easy it is. That's the oldest trick in the book. That's one of the very first things I learnt in Photoshop. And like I said, look, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that image as it is, but yeah, if you want to just make those shells a little bit bigger, if you can't find a nice big shell, that's a nice easy trick. Okay, and then finally we just go up to layer and flatten image, and that's our finished image. So hopefully you found that useful. Hopefully you did enjoy it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. It gives me an idea of what people like and what they want to see. So if you do want to see more videos like this, give it a thumbs up, hit like, hit subscribe. My next video will be a live stream. I'm planning a live stream this weekend, so stay tuned for that. Hit that notification bell, and I will usually give you a few hours notice before I go live. And we might even head back to Shelley Beach and have a bit of a live stream at Shelley Beach. So stay tuned for the next live stream, and hopefully I'll see you soon.